got a story about Ireland, written by somebody Irish, read by somebody Irish. I'm gonna love it or hate it, right? Hi, and welcome back to the channel. We're back with another book review today, and this with the very recent release of the debut novel of an Irish author by the name of Shauna Lawless, called Children of Gods and Fighting Men. Now, I don't really do NetGalley very much. I was scrolling through NetGalley one day and I was trying to basically see what was coming out in the near future, and lo and behold, I seen the Celtic artwork on the book. Clicked on it, thinking it was just going to be an historical tale, and then found out it was a historical fantasy, and, well, how could I resist? I ordered an ARC for it, I've read the ARC, and I'm delivering this review to you on the week that's been released. So what is Children of Gods and Fighting Men about? Well, it is an adult fantasy story that is based on historical events. The historical events, there's a bit of a patchwork record kept, so it allows for some freedom and to insert some myths and legends in there as well, but still having a real sense of place and of currency in terms of locations and places that are still existing in the world today. So the plot basically centres around two women, both who come from families or lineage that grants them mythical powers or magic. Two characters, one called Gormla, who is a Fomorian, and Fomorians are blessed with the ability to use fire magic, but they're also blessed with extended and long life, so they will outlive their peers. And this causes them some problems because obviously if somebody's not aging at the same rate that everybody else is aging, you're going to be discovered, so they kind of have to live a little in secret. For that and other reasons, as I'll discuss. Our other main character is a character called Fola. And Fola is a descendant of another mythical race of people called the Tuatha De Danann, who are known for hunting down the Fomorians. But our main character, Fola, is blessed with magical powers that include ability to heal. So we have our main characters that are both capable of magic, but they live in a world that is being fought over by mortal fighting men. And these mortal fighting men are vying for control of not only the region, but the entire world, or the entire country of Era or Ireland. So the story is based in Ireland just around the turn of the millennia, year 1000 at the time, just before it, and it's told roughly over a 10-year period, with our two characters who live in this world, and they are manoeuvred by individuals and by their own motivations for their children, for their family that they belong to, into being involved in this conflict in some way. That's roughly the main characters, but obviously sitting outside of there are some big other ones. We have Gormla's son, Citrich, who is a mortal boy who she's very, very fond of, her favourite child, so to speak, and she wants to see him rise to power. We have Fola, who takes on other family members and takes over want for them and care for them, as she is manoeuvred into place. We also have some other people that people will recognise. So we have Bran Baru, who was the king of Munster, and his son is Inachil Murcha, and a couple of others that are in there. But anything that I tell you will kind of guide into spoilers, some of the events that happen, some of the things that are going to evolve throughout the book. But one of the main things that sticks to me, and I'm going to talk obviously about the themes and the things that I like and dislike in this, but one of the things that I really like about it is that in basic terms, from what I've told you, you would suspect that there's a good guy and a bad guy. You have the people that wield magic or fire magic are the baddies, the people that heal are the good guys, and it's sort of true, but it's not painted quite so black and white as that. We look and examine the individual characters that we've got here, who Gormla is as a person, who Fola is as a person, and actually whether there's something more to being part of the good guys or the bad guys. And there's a greyness in here for sure. There's a greyness that comes through in examining the very essence of what these women are, why they do what they do, and what they hope to achieve and how they go about doing it. So I think there's a real sense of who actually is the enemy, or is anybody the enemy. And certainly at points throughout the book you're made to examine this idea of, or you're rooting for this person or you're rooting for this other person, but sort of you're rooting for both, even though they're in opposing ways. I'll also talk about the magic system, because the magic system is set out, and I've set it out at the start, but for a lot of the book it's hidden and it's bubbling under. the surface, so it doesn't really come out to the fore in massive amounts or multiple times throughout the book, but the threat and the presence of it's always there, which I think is really interesting. If I look at some of the themes that I really liked, and this is the bits that I'd really like to talk about in my reviews, are themes that go along or that jump out at me. So whether they apply, then, whether they still apply now, and what comes from that. So I've talked about these women who are sort of from immortal backgrounds, but they have mortal children, or that these two very mythical lines or heritages are dying out as they mix with the mortal population. The potency of their lines is dying out. So we have Citrich, Gormla's child, who is mortal, and while the bloodline's thinning out, they're wanting to hold on to this, but also elevate the family, the people that are still there. And some parts of the races are kind of trying to brush off the mortal parts of the family, and then obviously the mothers and fathers, and this sense of family still prevails in a very Irish sense. And then you have this idea that both of these women are kind of hiding their true nature in plain sight. So the two-headed Danann would be hunting the Fomorians, so the Fomorians can't be seen to blatantly use and control and exploit the fire magic, otherwise they're going to be sought out. It's thought that they died out, so they don't want to reveal themselves. So Gormla can't use their fire magic to really exert ultimate power over mortal men. Has to keep it hidden. And what does that do to somebody? Same actually for Fola. Fola's made to obscure the ability that she can heal in the entire book. And it creates this idea or this problem for both, where they go, can I be true to myself? They're not. What's their natural instinct to do? What would they like to do? And again, it speaks back to the nature of who we are as people. And at a certain point, when somebody says you can't do something, but your true nature says otherwise, how long does that last? How long can you hold on to that as an individual and go, right, this is my role in society, and it's not what my natural role in life is? But the biggest theme, I think, of the entire book is the idea of the patriarchy. We have two powerful women here, both in terms of, magical powers, but also in terms of identity and who they are and what they believe. Yet, they live in a world that is controlled by men. This is children of gods and fighting men. And men run the society. The women are subservient on the outside at the very least. And yet we have these two women. And these two women are hell-bent on actually maintaining the patriarchy. They would sort of like to have more influence in some way, but they want to promote and look after young men that are in their care, and again feed back into the system, and they're influenced by men that are in there. And it'll come back to another point that'll make sense in a while, but it's this idea of are all men alike. It also goes to the fact, because they're ageless or otherwise, Gormla has the ability to use her sexuality to control and to gain power and to gain influence. It's very much upfront, and it's something, because she doesn't age, she kind of has this eternal beauty. Whereas Fola is made to obscure beauty, and she can't use it. And again, it looks at both sides of these within a patriarchal society. And you couldn't have a more current topic in a lot of ways, based on a legend over 1,000 years ago, but still, these are very real issues that we can look at through modern lens. And while I'm a man reading this, written by a female, I think it's really interesting to kind of examine that through modern lens and look backwards in that regard. So, I did touch on it recently, but this idea of the nature of man or woman. What makes somebody good or bad? Is it black or white? Is it mainly the region that they come from, their heritage? So whether they grew up and brought up as a Viking, does that give them reason that they can go and behave, or that their value system is a certain way? Is there idea that if you're from Leinster, you're different from the people that are Munster? Does that give you another set of values? Or does your position in society influence that? So does a king have to behave a certain way? Is a king forgiven for acting like a certain way? The way that they treat people is acceptable because you're a king and you have ultimate power, you can do what you like. We even have some characters, especially men, and when we're talking about patriarchy, it's looking at the nature of the quality of men. Are all men the same? Do they conform to this kind of turn of the millennia stage of, multiple wives, women are to be used and abused, or are there men who, seated in their nature, are actually good and actually have strong values and are willing to stand up and fight for them? I think all of this stuff really, really fascinating. And the last thing that I want to really talk about is this idea of suspicion in nature. Again, really prevalent in today's society, for sure. But how easy it is to place distrust in people that basically live next door and our neighbours. You can plant seeds and tales in them. Those people over there are barbarians. They basically eat their own young. They murder with abandon. They have no regard for human life. Not like us. They're different from us. And you place distrust in individuals to the point that you can manipulate people and get them to do whatever the hell that you want. Don't need me to tell you that that's 2022 kind of written in a nutshell, and it's still very impactful on the page, because you really see, again, tied to patriarchy, tied to the identity of self, that all of those things are a vehicle for controlling people and for controlling a message and for controlling people to do what you want them to do. And it's utterly fascinating the way that it's portrayed here and examined, and not entirely resolved because we've got a trilogy to do, but all of these themes are all mixed up in there. It's great. So thinking about the things that I really love, what I would call the strengths, this is the bit that could have backfired one way or the other one. I was either going to think that this was stereotypical representation of Irish, jingoistic, all of those kind of things, or it was going to be something that I really reveled and loved. And I have to tell you, I loved this sense of Irish identity that is in this book. I think if I think about the things that are quintessentially Irish about Irish society, there are a couple of things that really come to the fore, and one of them is the nature of Irish people and their regard for family and homeliness and treating other people well and right and being just. And this comes through loads of times in the book. For all of the political machinations that are going around, the interactions on a person-to-person level in small villages really just go to show this off. And every time it happened on the page, I kind of reveled in it, because I went, I identify, I see this in people, I see this in small villages, I see this in big towns. It's something that just felt like home, and I really reveled in those parts of the books. You also have really like the understated nature of magic. We read a lot of books, many of us, where the magic is kind of way up, turned up to 11 from the start. The fact that it can only be used, quietly or in limited terms, actually gives real drama to the book, where maybe it wouldn't have that maybe in other set pieces. I really enjoyed the fact that it was restrained and that it wasn't, very much a fantasy world. It was a real placed world with magical elements that spring through. I fully expect that this will be developed in future books, because it really will give the books and trilogy impetus going forward. And then you have the bubbling tension that lies underneath between the females in the story. People are being maneuvered around the company, being put into place. The females kind of have this fight for place in society, being controlled, but they also play a very strong and important part in society. Whether it's our two main characters or other females in society, there's definitely a sense that there are some of the female characters judge other female characters in this, which I think is really, again, relevant and true to what happens to some of the people that are the most critical are other females. I've a couple of kids that go to school. Females are most critical of other females. Again, that feels very true here. And then you have the various threats. You have the various threats between the regions of Ireland, between the leaders of those regions and the places within it. But you also have an international threat of the Vikings, and whether they could come and just, for all of the machinations and fighting between the internal politics, there's no external force that could come out and just tear it all up, be friend or foe. And the last point I make about things that I really liked is that Irish people, I think by nature, are storytellers. Whether that's in song, poetry, writing, the lyrical nature of the society, or even the old man that sits in the pub and tells the joke or the story from when they were a young boy or otherwise. It's very much a true nature of Irish culture and Irish society, and this evokes all of that. And look, I can't wait for my wife to read it. I can't wait for my kids to read it, because hopefully they'll identify the Irish nature in it and the things that make us who we are, while hopefully reveling in the manoeuvring of the pieces around the chessboard and all of those things that go with it. I adore Children of Gods and Fighting Men. It has a long way to go in terms of telling its story, but I love first books that set things up. They give you an understanding of the world. They give you an understanding of how things could be and will be. And while a lot of the endgame's still to be delivered, and I maybe questioned whether, the back and hand, two-handed nature of the delivery gives it real drive and impetus, it made it a very easy read. By the time you got to the end of a chapter, you got sort of a bow wrapped around an event or something that happened. I never felt unsatisfied at any point during the book, and these are things that I really, really loved. So for me, I got an ARC. I bought a copy. I'm probably going to buy another copy because my wife's a spine bender and she just can't have my bloody copy, especially the ones come from Broken Binding. That's not an option here. So I'll have to buy another copy, and it's something that I can't wait to see more of, and really enjoyed. If you've read the book, let me know down in the comments. I know I normally do a spoiler section, but this book's only out. I might pop one on in a while if other people find that they've read the book and they want to have a conversation. That's the best time to do it and talk about it, because there's a lot of intrigue going on here. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Speak to you again soon. Take care.